morning, everyone. So we've got a series of questions here to ask our esteemed panel, and I'll get right into it. Whoever wants to go first can just jump right in there. Our first question, what does it mean to advance equity in the workforce system? I was a high school teacher, so I will call on you if necessary. Go ahead.
I'll start us off. Good morning. I'm Kwatsi. My name is Joseph Quintana. I do want to thank a couple people in the room. Brent, thank you for your stable leadership and guidance over the years, and Kim Vitale, if she's in the room, and Nat Cooley as well. Thank you all in our DINAP team. You can tell I'm trying to earn some points here with some folks in the room here now. But in regards to us having this type of conversation, when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, we also have to talk about truth. We also have to talk about justice. And oftentimes, those two particular subjects are difficult conversations for us to have. When we talk about, I'm just talking about the community which I serve, which is one of the most underserved and most marginalized communities in the entire nation. Imagine America's first people, Native Americans, have 3 times the unemployment rate than all other people. American Indian women face gender wage gaps. As soon as they enter the job market, they earn 50 cents to every $1 that a non-Hispanic white male makes. Our community continues to face high rates of cycles of poverty. And when I'm talking about cycles of poverty, I mean 3 generations of our families continue to be faced with poverty issues, meaning there's lack of opportunity for success, lack of us to see what a high achiever could mean or what even it looks like to even enter the middle class sector. That immediately puts us at a disadvantage so that our young people feel a sense that they can't make it. There's lack of hope. There's a reason why our people also continuously face high rates of suicide ideation. Just in our community, which is in Southern California, California as a state has one of the largest contributions to our national economy than any state in the entire United States, but we continuously face 40% rates of suicide ideation by American Indian women by the time they're age of 25. Imagine that great deal of hopelessness our young people face. They don't see themselves as the CEO. They don't see themselves as the doctor, as the nurse, as the head of the boardroom. Instead, they're, as what was described previously, continuously placed in these positions where they're low entry-level wages, and there's no opportunities for upward mobility or career advancement. But why? We have to talk about the history that all of our peoples, no matter if you're black or Asian or Latino or Native American, there are the commonalities and similarities that all of our peoples face. And those things have always continuously been swept under the rug, just in regards to American Indians. Some of those issues in regards are impacted by federal policy, such as the forced removal of American Indian children from their homes and placed in decentralized locations across the United States, or American Indians displaced from reservation communities and placed into large urban metropolitan centers like Los Angeles, New York, San Francisco, just to name a few. And there's a lack of opportunity or lack of job placement or career growth for them. So those are some of the issues that we have to deal with together. And it's not solely a labor issue. It's not solely a federal government issue. This is all of our issues that we have to work together. As we talk about we owe what we can't do it without also being inclusive of the Native American community.
Thank you. Who's next? Second.
Sure. Well, when I think about equity, well, first of all, I just want to really recognize this room. We are all so lucky, all of us who represent working people in the United States are so lucky that there is an extraordinary team at the Department of Labor, and extraordinary leadership at the Department of Labor. Acting Secretary Sue, Brett, who's here in the room, and I want to do a special shout out to the ETA and everybody in it, including those of you who work on the front lines in the regional offices. You're the ones who see the problems day to day. I'm a labor organizer, and I run an organization called Resilience Force. And in my organization, it's the frontline organizers who are going to the day labor corners, to the temp agencies who have the expertise. You're like them. You're the ones who are bringing back the real intel from the ground and solving those problems. So thank you. When I think about equity, I think what it really takes is reimagining people at the center of the story, reimagining the people at the bottom of the economy. And I'll give you an example. My work at Resilience Force really started after Hurricane Katrina, when the hurricane and the flooding that came after turned the Gulf Coast into the world's largest construction site. It's not an exaggeration. And the people doing the rebuilding of the Gulf Coast, were mostly black and brown workers. They were mostly migrant workers. And my days would start at 5:30 in the morning under a 60-foot tall statue of Robert E. Lee. Lee's Circle became the hiring hub for hundreds of workers, and contractors would arrive in buses, pick up these workers, and go with them, take them out to the distant corners of the Gulf Coast. And I watched as an American recovery took place. Now, Katrina was supposed to have been a once-in-a-100-year storm. Since Katrina, there have been over $200 billion disasters. Over 200 disasters that have cost $1 billion or more, and there is now an entire economy based on disaster rebuilding. We call this the resilience economy. It's got over $1 trillion in it. It's got public money, FEMA money, HUD money fuels this economy, private insurance money. If you live and work in Louisiana or Florida, you know it very well. If you live and work in California, or if you're in Kentucky, you've seen the recent tornadoes. Disaster recovery is extraordinary business, and there's a huge amount of money. But here's where there's an opportunity to create equity. This huge economy can be an engine of racial equity and opportunity for millions of workers. It's not that right now. It takes us writing the rules, and it takes partnership. We're really thrilled to be partnering with the ETA to see how people who are usually seen in this country, who are usually understood in this country as low wage and low skilled, can actually be repositioned in the economy as high wage and high skilled. That's what takes partnership. That repositioning of the people at the bottom of the economy up to the top. And it is possible. In New Orleans, for example, we've taken service workers who lost their jobs during the pandemic, lost jobs that paid $7.25 an hour, and we repositioned them, retrained them, and repositioned them with the help of WIOA money as resilience workers on a path to $24 an hour. They experienced, within a year, a change of their position in the economy from $7.25 an hour to $24 an hour. That's what takes the partnerships. In California, thank you. In California, we're taking out-of-work farm workers, and we're retraining them as resilience workers to do disaster preparation, preparing for climate change. They've gone from farm worker wages. We've launched them into careers starting at $35 an hour. So I'm here to tell you equity is possible. Racial equity is possible. A new economy is possible. And if we're going to do it, we need to take huge swaths of the economy and use them as our engines. Disaster restoration, preparation for disasters, rebuilding, property restoration. There's a huge amount of money here, and we need to basically move it to lift up the boats at the bottom of the economy. But we can't do it without partnership, and we'll never get to scale without all of you in the room. That's what really makes it possible to pull these levers.
Good morning. So I also, as everybody has done, want to thank DOL for having us all here, and particularly Secretary Sue, who, coming from California, was just a dream. So we are, our fingers crossed, and we are so grateful for what she did in the High Road Training Partnership space in California, which really allowed labor management partnerships to come in and really do the good work that needs to be done. So I'm Dean Foreman, the Executive Director of the Hospitality Training Academy. I run the training arm of Unite Here Local 11 and its contributing employers. So our goal is to do the hard lift, to move the homeless, the reentry, the foster youth, the veterans, the folks from marginalized and vulnerable communities into the hospitality sector. And going into what Saket said about repositioning, we really need to shatter some people's expectations of what the hospitality industry is. In California, when we talk about stadium jobs, whether it's Dodger Stadium or SoFi or Crypto.com, whatever it is, those jobs are $25 an hour for fast food attendants, $40 an hour for cooks. In our hotels, room attendants are making $25 an hour. Cooks are making close to 30, sometimes 40. We are lifting those wages. We are done with calling the hospitality industry a low-skill occupation. We are moving it to middle skill. We are looking... But it's not my job as the training entity to do that. That's the job of the union and the employers to come up with collective bargaining. And for those of you who don't know what a labor management partnership is, it is us working with our contributing employers. And Unite Here Local 11 has 170 employers and 32,500 workers. We're here to upskill those workers, the dishwasher to a cook, the room attendant to in-room dining, whatever it is. And we have 4 registered, and I never say the word apprenticeship without saying register, but we are a 4 registered apprenticeship, room attendant, culinary, bartender mixology, barista latte artist. These are what we're doing. We're certificating people with 5 stackable certifications and putting them into these good jobs. And the piece that I want to use while I'm here, and I mean it with all due respect, is I want to work with those community organizations in the trenches, right? We're to, as everybody's saying, meet people where they are, but I have to ask DOL to let us do that and to make the system better and easier and get rid of some of the bureaucracy that we are currently facing. So we are taking this fight as a labor management partnership, partially because we're part union and we like to fight a little bit, but we just want to push the envelope, and we want to say, listen, if you want us to meet people where they are in their communities, then you have to lighten up on some of the load and not force us to pass a small CBO in the communities, a 200-page document of which they cannot handle an audit from WIOA. It is not humanly possible for the organizations that are deep into the trenches. And I want to just give a couple examples of what we've seen when we talk equity. We are working with UFCW, and because the Farmer John meatpacking plant in Los Angeles closed. For those of you that have ever had a Dodger dog, those days are over. So we went in there and we are trying to take 1,568 UFCW workers into good union jobs, whether we place them at UFCW jobs in the grocery stores and train them, because UFCW in LA does not have a training entity, so we are in partnership with our sister union, but we are trying to get those folks and those dislocated workers who are deeply traumatized, who have been laid off, are gonna get a packet from us. And we have tried everything we can to consolidate, but I just want you to understand this. We have a dislocated worker packet that is 16 pages and requires 8 signatures. We have a one-stop packet that requires 16 pages and 8 signatures. And a DOL and State of California registered apprenticeship packet that is 24 pages and 10 signatures. That means somebody with possibly an 8th grade education at most sometimes, or an immigrant, Vietnamese, Chinese, Latino, whatever it is, they are getting a 59-page packet with 25 signatures in it. It's just not doable. Our Pearl for our career grant has 496 data elements in it. I mean, enough. I have to say that we really need to look, if we want to meet people where they are and get them into programs, folks deep in the community, then we have to make this an easier process. And that's really what I think as the, Fred pushed the envelope a little bit yesterday on good union jobs. If we're talking getting people into the trades, then let's get them into the unionized trades. In my job, it's all about career ladders. I have employers that sit there and want to hire out of us, but we need to get those folks that are in those communities easily into our training programs. We have 100% placement. 100%. We don't train unless we have a job at the end, a union job with benefits, whether those benefits are healthcare and dental and a pension and a legal fund and a training fund. We do everything we can to support those workers, get them into family self-sufficiency wages, and really move the envelope.
Thank you, Aideen. Dr.
Well,
Wiggins?
Sure. Look, again, my name is Corey Wiggins. I serve as the federal co-chair for Delta Regional Authority and appreciate our federal partners for this invitation. DRA is a federal regional commission. We service 252 counties and parishes across 8 states. Most of those states are located across the Delta region, so parts of Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, Southern Illinois, and Southeast Missouri. And so there are about 6 commissions across the country. You have Northern Border Regional Commission, you have Appalachia Regional Commission, Southeastern Crescent, Denali, and Southwestern Commission. We are all federal agencies that work across the country. What makes us unique as a federal agency is that all we do is grant making. Our grant making portfolio includes water and sewer, infrastructure, transportation, workforce development and training. Communities, whether it be community-based organizations or government or other public bodies, leverage us in a lot of different ways, including as an opportunity for match dollars to other programs that they're trying to create and develop in their communities. And I bring that into this room, but to that point about, even in this space, the role of government, the role of federal government, and how we think about these issues around equity. First, personally, I'll add to this, and I am so great to be on this panel and honored with some folks, because prior to this role as DRA Federal Co-Chair, I served as Executive Director for the Mississippi NAACP. And so bringing this perspective to this conversation, both on an advocacy side and now on a government side, this work of equity is not a thing that an organization just does or any entity. It is a participatory model. It is a process. It is an engagement, whether it is direct through policy, advocacy, direct services, but it's participatory in nature. The reason I bring that, and one of the great examples I have of that is that his folks were stewards of history of the civil rights movement, and think about a Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, and the work that they did, and their organizing model was really based on living in community, building partnership in community, and lifting up the expertise that already existed, right? So from our approach, even at DRA, we have, over the past year and a half, thought about this work of equity in a participatory type of way. And how does that look? What is the process? That means showing up and being present to listen to communities, to listen to community-based organizations, to listen to government leaders, to understand, and first realizing when we come into the room, we are not the experts. The people that are experts are the people in that room with their lived experiences who understand and know their community. What we are there to do is to be there to support and help facilitate what we have as a way to partner so people can develop and create vibrant communities, because people know how they want their communities to look, taste, touch, and smell. We're just here as an agency to support them in doing that. So what does that look like for us from a process standpoint? After spending the past year looking, learning from communities, we have underwent a complete redesign of most of our programs within our agency. not based upon what we wanted to do, but based on what we learned from people who are doing the work on the front lines. How do we make our application process easier for people to not only access, but actually complete, right? How do we offer technical assistance? Today, as a matter, no, just yesterday, we have some of our team members who in Alexandria, Louisiana, doing a technical assistance workshop, working with people to help them understand our grant-making process. So how do we show up and be present? But also, one of the things that everybody know in communities, whether it's folks who are doing work around workforce and other issues, is that there is availability or more funding that's available. But if you're doing really, really good equity work, you realize that historically there have been certain places in the communities organizations who have not been able to access funding. So they may not even have the beginning of what they need to be positioned to take advantage of larger funding, whether it be grant making from a government agency or philanthropic agency. Process-wise, one of the things that we did organizationally is set up a new program around strategic planning and capacity building grants that are for organizations and entities to take advantage of, who need to do the planning, who need to think through a little bit more, who need to create a better application to be able to increase their success for funding. So when we talk about equity, when we talk about this work, you know, it is not just this dream. It is something that we can actually take and operationalize in a way to make communities, to make organizations, and funding to do this work more accessible. And so that's how, when we're thinking about our diversity and equity work, it's not just a piece of work. It is ingrained and is being ingrained in the very fabric of the organization.
Thank you. We kind of touched upon this next question, but I kind of want to put it out there just in case anybody has anything additional to add. How do we meet workers in communities where they are and acknowledge the longstanding historical inequities? I think this is a really important piece of this if we're going to continue to push the ball forward. So does anybody want to take that to start?
I'll start with that one. Show up and be present and not be scared to be present. You know, so often we want to think about how we, you know, script engagement, how we script an opportunity to engage with community and with people. There are certain organizations, and we've always been there, there are certain organizations that always get called to be part of the room, whatever the room is, or called to be at the table. The thing is, show up at the existing table and ask, well, who's not here and why they not here? And be honest and be upfront about that opportunity of what engagement looks like. You know, we always talk about, you know, to that point, how do we show up? How do we be present? Ask people the question. Part of this work and part of the barriers to reaching equity is that people who sometimes say they want to do the equity work go into the other room and say, we want to do the equity work. That is not how you do equity work. No, show up with people in community and sit there and listen and stop talking. Sit there and listen, learn to understand, and then take what you are learning and start to think about your own internal processes. And when you start to really examine your internal processes, go back to people again and ask them, what do you think about this? Does this work for you? If it don't work for them, go back and do it again. So and that's why I bring up this idea of participatory. Like, so often we go in a room and say, hey, we want to do equity work, we want to do this and do that, and we create policy and programs, and we come out and release them. And when we look at them, we realize we're getting the same applications from the same people. We got the same organizations engaging. And then we ask ourselves this question about, well, what happened? We want to reach a different audience. The whole process in which we did it did not work, and it has not worked. And so we have to turn it upside down.
Go ahead. So I was going to take a little different spin on this, but totally agree with what you said, which is that we, particularly in Los Angeles, have a crisis on homelessness of epic portions. I mean, it is just it's just unbelievable what is going on in Los Angeles right now, and we are trying to figure out the best way to move folks before they get into homelessness into those good union jobs. That is, without a doubt, what we're trying to do. But what we don't see is the money to do that. We understand that you need to build housing. We need to build lots more of affordable housing, transitional housing, shelters, all of that. But we need to look at the silos that are existing in workforce. There are silos in homelessness where it's all about housing. There are silos in domestic violence where the shelters aren't giving people exposure to the WIOA system. There is survivors of slavery and trafficking. There is the re-entry population. Everybody's in silos, and what we're trying to do when we talk about the equity issue is when we get folks that come out of these communities that are hard to serve, they have multiple barriers across so many boards. And what we are really looking to do is look at that flexibility, the co-enrollment, the braiding of funding. We need the ability to do classroom incentives. We need the ability to help people with whatever they need. We don't have the flexibility we need to really help these folks. When we get them and we think they're job ready, there's so much they need, whether it's glasses because they haven't been to an eye doctor. In 10 years, how are we supposed to train somebody to be a cook that can't see what they're cutting? We need that. They need non-slip shoes. They need all of these support services that we really want to make sure that we have the team around us and we have the right partners and we're getting folks from these communities, pipelining these folks into us where we know at the end of the day when we have the employers lined up to take them that they're going to be successful. We'll have their union brothers and sisters on the job sites looking out for them, mentoring them, making sure that they have a great home in that kitchen or in the room attendant world. But we really need that flexibility and that real look at taking away the silos in all the different systems.
Yeah, just to build on some of that, I want to start with what Dr. Wiggins talked about, which is just proximity with community, and I want to tell a quick story of a pretty extraordinary morning where people showed up, went where workers are, showed up for them, and really started where the workers are at. My members who rebuild after hurricanes, floods, and fires, they have historically been understood as, quote unquote, just day laborers. When most people see them, they see unskilled workers, right? Well, if you think they're unskilled, try working 16 hurricanes in 4 years. Try putting blue tarp on roofs, if you line them up, the length of 10 football stadiums. These are actually incredibly skilled people. Over the course of 15 years of hurricanes, floods, and fires since Katrina, this is a workforce, which we call the resilience workforce, that has accumulated extraordinary skill. They've accumulated something else, which is also a sense of purpose and vocation around their work. They do this work because they're committed to it. They're committed to helping people come home, people who had to leave their homes. So, what my staff and I see is people with extraordinary skills and a deep sense of vocation. What sometimes the rest of the world sees is unemployed people standing in front of a Home Depot, right? They're often called an extra pair of hands, right? Contractors will come up to the Home Depot and say, I got everything I need. I've got the materials. I've got the money. I just need the hands. As if these are people whose hands are somehow not connected to their bodies and their minds, So earlier last year, we were in discussion with now Acting Secretary Julie Su and then Labor Secretary Marty Walsh, and we proposed to them and their team that they come and recognize this new workforce. They come with us to New Orleans, and when we talked about it, we all agreed that this historic meeting, the first time the DOL is recognizing these workers, shouldn't happen in a conference room in a New Orleans hotel. It was actually, the secretary's team that suggested, oh, maybe we should just go with you like you do every morning, go with you 2 hours outside of New Orleans and stand there at 5:30 in the morning as workers are waking up in their cars. And that's what we did. And what followed was an incredibly moving, incredibly beautiful exchange in a church that had been destroyed by the hurricane between all of these workers who had been doing this rebuilding and the Secretary and now Acting Secretary of Labor. It was an extraordinary moment where government worked exactly as we want it to work. And so I think of how important that was to the workers who a year and a half later still talk about it. I think about Mariano Alvarado, who has repaired homes since the week after Hurricane Katrina and gave his roofing hammer to the secretary as a memento. That's how much it meant to him. So I just want to say that, yes, we have to start where workers are at. Yes, we have to recognize them. We have to support them. We also have to understand that these workers and many others have a deep sense of vocation around what they do, not just skill, but they're committed. That worker who went through a training and went from being, cleaning the kitchen to becoming a mixologist, that person is deeply dedicated to their job. By the way, ETA people, I've been to your swanky offices. I know you're not doing it for the view. You're doing your work because you're profoundly connected to our working families, right? We all do our work because our own families needed the things we do. And so connecting to a worker's sense of deep vocation, the reason a worker might make those sacrifices, is really a profound part of starting where they're at.
Just want to add a final comment to the conversation. Appreciate all of the panelists and for sharing. And I just want to share a couple of things very quickly, just to the point that Dr. Wiggins had started us with, is that one of the greatest gifts in our particular culture, one of the greatest gifts that you can give another human being is your voice. Because it's your life experiences, it's your spirituality, it's everything that's got you up until this point in your life that you're able to share with another human being. And the greatest act of respect that you can give another person is being able to listen. The work that you all continue to do, it's not easy work by any means. And the impact of it is felt, even I'm sure by my colleagues up on this panel, but I'll share in my own case. I grew up in the Skid Row area of Los Angeles, one of the most impoverished areas in the United States. I slept on the floor beside my great-grandmother. We were housing unstable. We were homeless at one time. When we talk about the labor problem, of course, we talk about the living wages of those job seekers. We talk about the capital and the ability of our business owners for them to earn. We talk about the consumers, and all of us are consumers in one way or the other. But the fourth thing that we also need to talk about is the supportive services, and I think that was talked about previously. Being able to talk about all the things that go around the supportive care of individuals. Housing health, economic health, the physical health, the behavioral mental health of our members are all tied into one another. Being able to overcome those barriers, as was described, those silos that continue to keep us from providing that unified care, to allowing our members to seek out that long-term success, is something that we're all trying to attain as we speak. I think even in regards to the Department of Labor, being able to work with other groups like commerce, like agriculture, like health, and like many other, HUD, like many other folks as well. There's a couple of other things I also want to add in regards to criminalizing poverty. We criminalize our own people. We don't allow them the forgiveness to come back into the workplace. If they have payments that are past due, if they had an infraction, or if they had an issue when they were young. I'm not the same way. I don't carry the same viewpoints I did when I was 15 or 18 years old. Imagine now you're 30 or 40 years old and you want to enter the workforce and you can't because you had a ticket or you had an issue when you were growing up. We criminalize those people who want to do better, who have changed their lives and who are trying to make a difference for themselves and their families. We also make sure that we keep barriers in front of them and so that they can't enter the workforce. And those are some of the things that we need to do better at. You know, yeah. I think, you know, I just want to end on this very quickly. You know, the work is definitely hard, and the work that you all, that we're asking of you is not easy. But the onus is also on us. It's on the community-based organizations in order to establish areas where we can welcome you in and not greet you with, why don't you do better? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Instead, we should be bringing solutions to your front door and saying, let's partner on this. Let's find opportunities where we can bring resolution. Let's find other groups who we should bring in the room, because we need you. We need all of you to do better, to work towards equity, to make sure that our people have opportunities that they didn't have just a few years ago.
Thank you, everyone. We have come on our time here. You know, I think the comments made here should really drive us as we move out into our work after this conference. Thank you so much, and thank you to ETA.
Thank you all.